So it is my pleasure today to introduce the team that's going to be going through our topic, the top stage support questions. We'll start at the bottom and work our way to the top. Holly Novak is a very busy woman. Holly was recently promoted to manager of our HCM department, and she's a primary consultant as well for the Human Capital Advisory Group of CS3 Advisors. Holly has over 15 years of HR experience from operations to senior executive level positions. She's an active member and serves in leadership capacity of SHRM. Rhonda Six is an HCM consultant and is here at CS3 and is the newest addition to the CS3 team. She has more than 13 years of HR experience working in industry, and Rhonda's roles have included HR specialist, payroll administrator, benefits administrator, and employee relations. She's also an active member in the Tulsa Area Human Resource Association, the American Payroll Association, and SHRM. And then Jim Scheitower is a senior HCM consultant here at CS3 and is one of our longest term employees, and most of you know him very well. He's been supporting and implementing Sage HR and payroll customers for over 12 years. Before that, he was actually a Sage Abra client himself, so he brings a really unique perspective to his clients. His experience in business combined with his MBA ensures that all of you receive coaching in the best business practices. So I am going to pass this over to the team now. Holly, let me make you presenter. And then if you'll just share your screen with us.
All right, can you see my screen?
I can, thank you.
Awesome. And I assume you can hear me since you answered?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. All right, guys, so today we're going to discuss a few things for you. Rhonda is going to actually start off our talk and teach you how to add a new location or department in HRMS or Abra. And then Jim's going to take it over and discuss how to process a check for one or more employees in HRMS, as well as how to run quarterly updates. And then I'm going to finish off talking about how to add or update benefit rate changes in both HRMS and Abra. And then we'll end with some questions. So as we transition over to Rhonda, you all can laugh at this really hilarious cartoon that we have up there. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Rhonda.
Yeah, at this juncture, I was supposed to laugh out loud for everybody, so.
Yeah, thank you for laughing. I think it's hilarious. So, okay. Rhonda?
All right. Well, thank you, Holly. Can you all hear me?
We can.
Okay. Well, again, I'm Rhonda Six, and I'll be showing you how to add a new location in Sage HRMS. So let's go ahead and dive right in. First of all, when adding a new department, branch, or location or any other classification code, it's important to remember you'll need to add it in 5 places before it can be added to the employee. This is different in HRMS than it was in Abra. So before we start, I'm going to select a company because my system has the org level set up at the employer level. The first place we want to go is we want to add the new department to Human Resources. So we're going to go to the Setup, Employees, and we're going to go to the Code Tables and select Organization. Under the code type, I'm going to select Department so I can add a new department. I'm going to click the Add button, and I'm just going to enter in my new code for my new department, as well as my new description. And when I go to apply, that's going to give me an opportunity to be able to review the information I just entered before I hit OK. Once I hit OK, it's going to take me back to the summary page where I can see my new department has been added. And next, we'll go to Payroll. So let's go to Setup, Payroll, and under Code Tables, we want to select Class. Now, classes in payroll are basically the equivalent of org levels in HR. The difference is that HR has 5 org levels and payroll has 4 classes that you cannot rename. In my example, we know that class 2 is my department, so I'm going to select class 2, and I'm going to see my list of departments here. Scrolling down to the bottom, I can click Insert at any time on my keyboard, and that's going to give me the opportunity to go ahead and enter my code, and I'm going to enter my description. I'm going to click Save and Close, and then staying in payroll, we want to go to the General Ledger area and add our new department to the segment code. So let's select segment codes. And segment codes help us validate each segment in the chart of accounts. So let's select the segment for department. And scrolling to the bottom, I want to be consistent in what I enter. So I'm going to hit Insert on my keyboard again, and I'm going to enter the next segment code, and of course my description for my new department. And I'm going to click Save and Close. So then we're going to stay in the General Ledger, and I'm going to go to Accounts, because anytime you add a segment code, you need to update your accounts. So this can be done a couple of ways. First of all, we can do it manually, or we can import, which is probably going to be the most common, because anytime you add a segment code, you're probably going to need to add about 20 or more new accounts to the system. So I'm going to show you first how to do it manually. We're going to click on the Finder, and I'm going to bring my account list over, and I'm going to narrow this down to the 0900s. We're going to filter 0900, Find Now, and this is the list of accounts. You'll remember our third segment fell right after the 0900, so when I bring this over to my GL accounts page, I'm just going to highlight the 0900. I'm going to change it to the 1000, because when I do that, the Add button comes up indicating that I have added a new account. Now I can change any of my description or details on the page, which for my purposes, I'm going to keep the same. I'm just going to click Add. And this brings us, we've added the new account, so all we have to do now is I'm going to do an export and then show you how to set up a template to do an import. So when I click Export, I'm going to get the choices to choose whether or not I want to make it an Excel spreadsheet and where I want to save it, which I'm going to save as this department file right here. And then I want to set my criteria. So I'm going to select the Segment 3, Account Segment 3 under there and say Add, and then I'm going to double click, and I'm going to set the field value or the value as 0900, which again is that segment that fell directly before the one we added. When I click OK, and I'm going to click OK again, and so now I have a message that comes up that they've exported 30 records. So let's go to the File Explorer, and I'm going to get my file. And so you can see we have 30 accounts that came up, all ending in 0900. That's what we were looking for. And real quick, I'm going to hide these columns B to P so that we can work easier with what we need to work with. And now I'm going to set up a shortcut that I can save for future export-import needs. So this first column, I want to enter a formula, and it's going to be dependent upon items in columns T, U, and V. Now you could do this as a find and replace, but I like to have the sheet set up with the formula so that I can reuse it anytime I need to make an update. So you see I've got my formula in there, and what I want to do now is I want to bring that formula all the way to the bottom of the column. And now I'm going to do the same thing with a little change to it for column S so that I can keep my formatting. And I'm going to set up the formula again. Now, most clients received a spreadsheet like this during their implementation to use as a template for these types of processes. And if you don't have one or you can't locate it, if you'll go out to our website and start a serve ticket, then we can get it to you. But let's go ahead and get, So you can see I've got my new formula in at the top, and I'm going to bring it down to the bottom. Nothing has changed yet, but when I highlight column V and I make my changes, let's go ahead and change this first one to 1,000. Then I'm going to copy that. I'm going to bring it all the way to the bottom. And when I do that, you can see it changed all of the values in column A and all the values in column F. It's all based on what we entered in column V. So I'm going to save this as a new report just so that we can see what we're looking at. And I'm going to go ahead and close it. And then let's go back to import. And I'm going to select my new file. I'm going to tell it OK. And it's going to give me a message that says 1 account has been updated, 29 inserted for a total of 30 processed. That's the number we've been working with, so it seems like things are working and right on track. Let's confirm our work by checking the Finder. Let's pull those accounts back over here. And I'm going to filter this time by the third segment, 1,000. And there they are. That's exactly what we were looking for. So I'm going to close this. We've done a pretty good job so far. We just have one more place to add this. And so now we need to add the department to the employee configuration. Let's go back to Setup, Payroll, and under Database Setup, we're going to choose Employee Configuration. Now, the purpose of employee configuration is to map the HR codes to payroll. So while it's pulling it up, I'm going to go ahead and you're going to do this for each employee configuration. So under Class, I'm going to choose Department. And in the bottom section, I'm going to scroll all the way down to see our new department that we've added, but I need to map it to HR. Let's go all the way down and select that. And then I'm going to go to the Cost Center tab and do the same thing. Now, if you don't have a Cost Center tab on your employee configuration, it's okay. You're probably not using Cost Center overrides like I am in my test database. So we've got that. The other things to remember is you may need to check your earnings and deduction tabs for any distribution codes that need to be updated as well. Right now, we're going to go ahead and save and close. And so now that we've done that, we're ready to start adding these codes to our employees. So what I want to do is I want to go to Employees, View Employees, and I'm going to go ahead and select Hugh Allen. And let's go to Job and Pay, Current Job, and Organization. So he's currently in the sales department, but he was affected by our new changes. So I'm going to move him to department and apply. I'm going to go ahead and say yes to the create a job history record. I always like to do that when moving someone from one department to another. And you would do this for all of your employees that were affected by this org change. And so once you've done this for every employee, you're basically done. The last step is to go to payroll and run an open payroll. The open payroll process is going to fully sync these HR changes that we just made to the employees to the payroll database. So there you have it. We've added a new location to our company, and the next thing you need to do if your company is like mine and your org levels are set up at the employer level is you need to go back and do this for any other employers who were affected. But that's all we have. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jim to show you how to process a check for one or more employees. And looky there, that boss is just jumping in and making sure that we're staying busy. It's not like we have lots of information to turn over. Jim, it's all yours.
Thank you, Rhonda. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you.
All right, very good. Before starting out with our check processing for the one or more employees today, I just want to quickly go over something that may be a help to you now or in the future. So the first screen I'm going to show you is probably what you're used to when you go in to calculate payroll. I want to just direct you down to the bottom where it says delete all, and it's not bolded up. Basically what that means is that at this time when you go in to run calculate payroll, there are no unposted calculate payrolls outstanding, okay? So that means you're actually starting with a clear slate. So the next one you'll see actually has it where it says delete all is bolded up, which means that there is something in there. So after you run your first calculate for your payroll, going forward, you're probably always going to see it bolded up. We'll see here in a second why I wanted you to know that. And when you click this delete all, it will delete out all the unposted versus, and we'll go to my next slide, versus erase. Now, you can read all that stuff about what it is to erase and everything, but basically it's erasing the unposted activity that corresponds to that pay period that you have entered at the top or in, past that. So that is what erase does. So you can actually have two pay period end date calculate payrolls going at the same time, but when you choose that date for the pay period, that's the one that it would erase if you were to choose to do that. The merge button, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we go through our little processes, but that'll be coming up. So that's the erase button. So the next thing I wanted you to see on a pre-check register was pre-check register only brings in those unposted calculate payrolls that you have at this time, right? So it's not looking at anything historical. It's only looking at what your calculate payrolls are. And so normally, I know people like to put the check date from and to in there, but I always like to leave it like this. And what happens is that it will allow me to know whether I have more in there than I should. Do I have two unposted calculate payrolls going or just one? So if I just put in the 6/15 date, it's going to give me everything up until that point. So if there's any other unposteds in there that I'm unaware of, that will actually allow me to see that. And then my last slide is the print and post. I always want to just be clear about this as well. The print and post checks through pay period end date. So this is not a check date. This is just a pay period end date. And so if you had two calculated payrolls going with two different pay periods, it is possible that by the pay period end date that you choose to put in here, you could bring both in at the same time. So if you ever had two payrolls going at the same time, let's say a bonus run and a regular payroll run, you just have to think about it a little bit, and you can always give me a call and we can work through it. But you always want to make sure that if you're only wanting to do one of them, we just have to make sure that's all you get to do. So I just threw that out there. Obviously, I didn't go into any great detail. If you have any questions about it, just let me know. All right, so we're going to do the presentation on doing one or more employees today for payroll. So the first thing I will do is go to calculate payroll. This is assuming that all our time is in for the individual that we want. And so really at this point, we're going to leave the dates as they are. You can make them whatever is appropriate. Then I'm going to choose biweekly, which is my frequency. And then we're going to choose the selection tab. Now you see where it says include employees. We can actually go and choose our employee by some sort of criteria if we'd like. But I already know and Hugh is getting a lot of work today between Rhonda and myself. And then also make sure I put it into the 2 box so that it only does that one individual and not from 151 on. So now we're going to process. I'm not going to worry about the exceptions. That's not what we're here for, but you may want to look at them. We're going to close out of here. And we're going to do a pre-check register. I'm going to leave that date blank. We're going to say print. And so when this comes up now, you can see that in the top left-hand corner, you can see 151 in there. So we have one individual on our payroll. All you got to do now is just go through and make sure his numbers are correct and everything else is the way that you want it. So we're going to close out of there, and we're going to go do our second example. This one, we're actually going to create an employee selection list. So over to the left-hand side, we're going to choose employee selection. We can always check to see what we have by looking at the magnifying glass. We actually have one set up for commissions and one for a miscellaneous payroll run. But we're going to select one now for bonus. So, you know, maybe we have 3 people we want to put on a bonus run and just have those processed through payroll. Once again, once we get down to the grid, we can do the magnifying glass, go through criteria to choose and select these people if we didn't know their ID number. But I do know it, so I'm going to put it in. So 021 for the first one, we're going to hit insert key, moves us to the next line, 101, insert, and then 10229. We're going to hit the add button. And there's other criteria and stuff you can use right there. We don't have time to go through all that today, but if there's something else you would like to have, just let me know and we can walk through it. Keep in mind you can always keep your selection and just add and delete employees. Just make sure you hit the delete key on your keyboard to delete an employee. So now we're going back to calculate payroll. We're going to use the same dates. Making sure that our time is probably already in there. And then for the selection list, we're going to choose bonus. We're going to choose our biweekly, and we're going to process. This time I'm going to actually erase to show you what that does, which I think a majority of people already do. So we're going to not look at the exceptions. We're going to move on to the pre-check register. Once again, I'm just going to leave the date as is. And so you can see that that selection list only brought in the 3 people that we chose to. So your last thing is just to double check your numbers, make sure you got everything you want, and then you can proceed on with payroll. Our third and final example today is just going to be going in to calculate payroll, assuming that we already have time in for these individuals. We're going to do it for 3 people. Payroll date, whatever is appropriate, and we're going to choose biweekly. On the selection tab, we're going to look at the classes now. And so we're going to actually do class 1, which is the difference between office and plant here. And we're just going to choose plant people. Let's say they got a safety bonus or something. And so that would really, you know, help out to just make sure they do the plant people. This time we ran merge. And we're going to say no there, close out, do a pre-check register. And as you can see now, when it comes up, we actually have the 3 people we did the selection list for, and we have the 3 people that came through on our plant classification. So we X out of there, close out of that. And that's pretty much the 3 variations that we have that we can choose employees to do 1 or more employees. So once again, anybody has any questions on those, let me know. But hopefully you'll see that as being helpful. Some of you probably used to be on old Abra where it was not the same process doing 1 check as it was doing several people for 1, you know. So it's a little bit easier now, you do the same process. So, all right, so now we're going to move on to quarterly updates. talk about that for a few minutes. We're just going to do a rough overview here, just some general information and beginning steps, and go about looking at how to download the product update, some tips on installing the product update, and then updating the client files or the client on your machine, and then verifying the product update was successful. So when do I expect an update? Usually you can expect an update to be released the 3rd week out of every quarter, that last month of that quarter. So usually they're about right on time, and there always is one. I've been doing this job for 13 years now, and they've always been there. So how do I know when there's an update? After you get registered with the Sage portal, they'll actually send you notifications. I think you probably have seen it at times where you open up HRMS, and it actually tells you that an update is available at that time. So you should see them about now, because they are out. When should you run the update? Preferably before the first payroll of the new quarter. So somewhere in between the last payroll and the new payroll, just in case there are any tax updates, you want to make sure that they get registered in there for the next payroll. And a couple things for your, before you start your actual update, I would suggest, until you feel comfortable about it, but back up your data, your SQL files. You may have to get IT involved to help you out with that. You can also rely on maybe nightly backups that they do as well. And then at the time that you actually do the update, make sure that all users are out of HRMS. So, where do you get your update? Out at the Sage customer portal. So you can go out there, and they also have the knowledge base and that kind of thing. And if you're the first-time visitor to it, you'll be asked for your Sage customer number so you can register. So if you need that, it may be on some documentation that you have, or maybe give us a call. Maybe we can find it for you. But once you put that ID number in there, and once you set up everything, therefore you can go in and get your updates and other things that you may want after that. Once you are in the Sage portal, this is what it's going to look like. It'll tell you the latest products that are out there, the latest updates that are going on, and system requirements. And so once you select one of those, you can see where you can now choose to download now the actual file. And then you also have release notes that go along with it. It tells you what taxes were updated, what other things may have been done for HRMS. Installing a quarterly update, just keep in mind it always needs to be run from the server that the HRMS product was originally installed on. So if you can't do that, then it's probably always good to get IT involved. On the file that you download from the portal, you always want to make sure whether you saved it on the desktop or you saved it to another location. When you go to run it, do a right-click on it and run as administrator. And then after you click on that and you get started and you click on update, the wizard will actually guide you through. And so pretty much everything's defaults, but you can check it out and see if there's anything you need to know about. Updating individual client machines, the people will launch their client normally as they do to open up HRMS, and it'll go through some updates. Like I said, click OK to start process. You'll eventually get to a message that says HRMS could not detect the current version of one or more payroll modules. You're going to click yes to that, and then you can actually, it'll go through the process. You'll click OK, and then you should be updated on your client machine. Now, a couple things I have that you can look at. Now, this is actually a two-part thing, right? So Sage HRMS gets updated as well as your tax tables get updated. So now I'm showing you two different things to verify to make sure everything got done right. So I know that's on Calculate Payroll, and I apologize for that. But anyway, you would go to the Help button, which is the question mark in the green circle, and then go to the very bottom where it says About Sage HRMS. And then in here, you can see where there's actually a version, and you can actually make sure that that's the same thing that is on the update that you downloaded from Sage Portal to what that update number should be. The 10.6 means it's 2016, and we'll talk a little bit more of that in a second, why that's important. And then we would go into Calculate Payroll, and then we can see the tax version here of tax update. And of course, this is old now, January 31st, but once you put the second quarter on. So there's a lot that goes on here. That thing about where I said make sure everybody's out of Sage HRMS is big, because sometimes if this tax version does not get updated, it was because somebody was actually in the program. It did not go all the way through. So make sure that they're out, make sure it goes all the way through, or you'll have to contact us and we'll talk to you about it. So that tax version gets updated as well. So, all right, some final words and quarterly updates. Where I told you where, it said the version at, so here's why it's important. So the 2015, the last quarter update that's going to be done for it is going to be this quarter right now, second quarter 2017. So within the next 3 months, you're probably going to be looking to move up to the next 2017 version, and we'll talk about that here in a second. And then 2016, the last quarter update, will be the next quarter. So the third quarter will be the last. And then version 2017 and Abra 9.2 will continue on as they have been. Now, I emphasized HRMS through this little thing here because 9.2 has been out for quite some time. We're not doing any implementations on it. And so therefore, I know that everybody who's on it has probably been doing updates for a long time. So I haven't really hit on the 9.2. I don't have any end date on that. So we're just continuing on. So nothing that I know of in the near future, anything of that sort. So version 2017 upgrade. I know everybody likes to jump on the upgrade as soon as it comes out. It just recently came out. We recently installed it, and we're looking at some things. I think we have one client who has now gone on it, which is a new implementation, so we're testing out some stuff. And so what we like to do normally is we just like to hold off about a month or so and just make sure if there's any feedback that we hear through other Sage customers and stuff of that sort, just to make sure, we don't go through anything that, we could wait on, but we just want to make sure everything's good. And so there's going to be a slight delay from us with pushing people. Maybe within the next month or so, we'll get the okay, from our team, and then we'll start putting the 2017 on. So once again, we have 3 months to get 2015 people up to 2017. We have 6 months to get the version 2016 people up to date going into the new year and everything. So, all right, so that's pretty much all I have. And so now I'll hand it over to Holly, who will show us how to make some benefit changes.
All right, thank you, Jim. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
You didn't say anything about my hilarious cartoon.
I was so nervous I couldn't.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure everybody thinks hilarious.
I'm sure everybody can tell. You're probably not used to me being so, whatever. So.
No. All right. Well, thank you. So, as Jim mentioned, we are going to walk through how to update benefit rates in HRMS. So, just a couple things to start with. You, of course, get your updated rates from your benefit carriers. You want to make sure that you also check to make sure that there's no changes in your calculations. Sometimes, especially with those more difficult formulas, the voluntary life, critical illness, stuff like that, you can have some weird changes in your calculations, so just make sure you get that. Before you update any rates, make sure that you're between a payroll period, so finish the current payroll period that you're in, do your rate updates, and then go ahead and move on with your payroll. Once you run your open payroll after you update your rates, all of those are going to pull into your payroll system. We're going to go through 2 examples today. The first one is going to be updating a benefit without rate tables. And, you know, most of those are like your short-term disability, long-term disability, stuff like that. And then we'll look at one with rate tables. So let's look first at the one without rate tables. So you're going to go to Setup and Employees, click on Insurance Plans. We're going to make sure that we are in the correct, if your insurance plans are under Enterprise or under a company, we're going to keep it as Enterprise and click on LTD. I'm going to go ahead on this one and change the current amounts went into effect on. So we're going to do a future date here. They're going to go into effect on 7/1 of 2017 for this example. So once you get that in there, the coverage amount generally doesn't change, but for this one, the calculation is going to change. So I'm going to adjust that calculation just a little bit. Of course, we can always help you with that. The employee premium, which remember, this is the rate that you pay to the carrier for employee only, that's going to go up a little bit on this example to $17. Our dependent premium stays $0, but the employee contribution is also going to go up a little bit to $2. All those other tabs up there are not populated for this example, and they generally aren't, so we're just going to leave those alone. Once you hit OK down here, it's going to ask you if you want to add a benefit history record. I would always recommend that you do that, especially if you're changing rates. If you're just making a simple adjustment in an employee record, you don't really need to focus on that, but if you're actually doing open enrollment changes, go ahead and do that. A little message that pops up asking me if I'm sure, because it's in the future, so I'm going to say yes to that. Then it's going to update everybody's record. We always want to go into an employee record and check that to make sure that your benefit rates are updated. So we're going to go into Mr. Baird and check his LTD. I can already see that it's changed, but we'll click the plus sign there and go to cost and coverage. We can see that his employee contribution went up to 2 and his employee premium was 17. So that is an example of how to adjust rates without rate tables. Let's talk about an example with benefit rate tables. So generally, your plans with rate tables are going to be your medical plans, your voluntary life plans, critical illness, anything that really has to do with an employee or employee plus spouse, employee plus child, anything that you have those specifics with, this is where you're going to have your rate tables added, okay? So again, we're going to go to Setup and Employees. We're going to click on Insurance Plans. And today we're going to look at the HMO medical plan. So once you have that selected, the coverage amount is going to stay the same for us. Our employee premium, again, remember this is the amount that you pay to the carrier for employee only. That's going to go up just a little bit, and this is employee only, $615. Dependent premium is going to stay the same. Well, it's a rate table, so we're going to update that in just a second and make note of that name, med rate. And then under the employee contribution, we're going to make note of that name as well, so HMO contrib, and we'll update both of those rate tables. Those other tabs, again, are going to stay the same for this example. So we'll click OK. Again, it's going to ask us if we want to add a benefit history record, so we're going to say yes to that. Type in our rate change reason. It's going to go ahead and update benefits, walk through all of your employees. Sometimes this takes a while because it does go in and actually recalculate each employee's record. So we're going to skip it through a little bit for this example so you don't have to watch the green bar. All right, so once that's finished, we're going to click on Rule Type and click Benefit Rate Setup, Rate Table Setup. And the first one we're going to look at is your med rate, and that's the dependent premium, right? So we don't need to mess with those columns 1 and 2 unless you're adding in a dependent type. So we'll leave that alone. Remember, we already added the change for the employee only, for the employee premium, the amount that you pay to the carrier. We changed that in the plan. So we only have to focus on the other one. So the first one is 1 spouse, 0 child. That's going to update just a little bit to $487. And then we'll do employee plus children, 0 spouse, 99 children, $360. And then our family rate is going to change just a little bit too, up to $620. Once we hit OK down here at the bottom, it's going to, again, ask us for if we want to update benefits. We're going to say no because we have one more rate table to change, and we don't want to sit and wait for this to process as we do that. So we're going to say no for now, and then we'll run that as soon as we update the other one. So we're going to do employee contribution next. Again, those two columns stay the same, and this is the amount that the employee pays. This example is the monthly rate, right? And it'll get changed over to whatever frequency you have in the payroll system. So we're going to change our employee only to 135, employee plus spouse is going to go up just a little bit, 232, employee plus children is going to change to 205, and then finally our family is going to go to 410. Okay? So simple enough. Once we have those, we're going to click OK. Again, it's going to say, do you want to update benefits? And we're going to say yes this time. It's going to walk through and again pop up and ask us if we want that benefit history record, and we do want to go ahead and add that in, make it consistent with whatever you put in your insurance plan. And then that's also going to walk through all of your employees, make sure that it changes those calculations for each of the areas. Once we're finished with this here, we are going to go out and look at a couple of employees, make sure that every level changed. So you want to check not only employee only, but make sure that the family rates changed as well. So we'll go to employees again. We're going to go to Clay Andrews this time. And under insurance benefits, we'll check out his HMO plan. So you can see for this example, he does have the family plan, and that went up to 410. You can see his dependent rate also went up to 420, and his employee only premium went to 615. You see he has his spouse and child there for their family. Let's check out somebody that is employee only as well, just to make sure that we cover all our bases. So we'll go to Mr. Baird again, his HMO plan, and you can see his rates, no family, and his rates went up to 135. So that is how you update benefit rates with rate tables. And that is all I have today. So Sherry, I will go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Okay, great. Well, we do have a couple of comments and questions that we'll talk about. Let me go ahead and make myself presenter again. Hang on, I'll share my screen. Okay, and you can see my screen again now, Holly.
I can.
Okay, so a couple of you said that I got a couple of comments about how quickly these examples went through, and normally we only make these presentations available, the recorded presentations, to our SERV members, but because everybody's excited about what the team had to offer, we'll leave these available for a month so that you can just click onto a link. We'll send it to you so you can then play them at your own pace and pause it where you need to and where you'd like to make notes. Let me get my Q&A box back open, see if there's any other questions coming in. Hang on here just a second. And then the other thing, there was a little bit of discussion about the 9.2 because Jim went into, quite a bit of detail about what's happening with the rate tables and the versions on Sage HRMS. On Sage Abra 9.2, that product is still under support by us and, of course, by Sage, even though it is their old legacy product. As many of you know, they don't sell that product anymore, but they're still going to take good care of you until you move up to Sage HRMS. So your critical tax tables and any critical changes to payroll requirements will continue to come through, and both Sage and the CS3 team will be communicating that to you as any of those changes are due and appropriate to get applied.